welcome back to my channel. This is a first for videos for us. I am actually redoing one of my book review videos. It's not one that you've seen. It's a new one called Dear Wife by Kimberly Belle. And after I got to finish like editing the last one and I posted it, I was like, man, I forgot so much stuff while I was talking about it. And I kind of just didn't feel good about the review that I had put out. It was one of my reviews where I always like, "Oh, I'll be organized," and then I'm just scattered the whole time, but it was like times 40. It was bad. So we're going to redo it here now. And I actually, you'll be proud, I made notes. So I'm a little more organized. But Dear Wife by Kimberly Belle is I'll do the normal stuff how I normally do. I'll read the back, I'll say the non-spoiler like thoughts first, and then I'll move into the spoilers. So the back says, can she escape the person she once loved? Beth Murphy is on the run. For nearly a year, Beth has been plotting to leave her abusive husband. This is her one chance at freedom, one that requires a new look, new name, and new city. Each part of her plan has to be carefully thought out because one small slip and her violent husband will find her. Sabine Hardison is missing. A couple hundred miles away, Jeffrey returns home from a work trip to find his wife, Sabine, is missing. Wherever she is, she's taken almost nothing with her. Her abandoned car is the only trace for the police have to go on, and all signs point to foul play. The detective on the case will stop at nothing to bring this missing woman home. Where is Sabine? And who is Beth? As Beth's husband starts piecing together her whereabouts, she'll have to make a decision about her future that will leave readers breathless. So, this book is told from three different perspectives. So each chapter, it kind of rotates who the perspective is. And sometimes it doesn't go um dot dot dot. Sometimes I'll I'll explain. So the three different people that you get a chapter on each time are Beth, Jeffrey, and Marcus. Beth is the woman who's fleeing her abusive husband. Jeffrey is a man whose wife Sabine just went missing and who the book really wants you to like think that it might be that Beth and Sabine are the same person. But from the very start, I was like, there's no way these two women are the same people. And the third perspective is Marcus, the cop who is investigating Sabine's disappearance. So the book has two main questions and then a minor question that kind of ties into the other two. The first main question is Beth Sabine? And if Beth isn't Sabine, the second question is, what happened to Sabine? And then there's also the minor question of who Beth is. You know, if she's not Sabine, then who could she possibly be in this scenario? That Beth and Sabine were not the same person. I thought this from the very start of the book. I was like, there's no way these are two of the same people. Absolutely not. I'll go over my evidence of what I thought some more later. But who I thought Sabine was, or who I thought Beth was I thought Beth was Marcus's wife, the cop, and then I thought that Sabine was murdered. That's what I thought, and I'll kind of go over who I thought she was murdered by a little bit later because spoilers. I don't want to spoil too much, you know. But I I thought this book was okay. The beginning was really good because it really hooks you with like this mystery of what's going on in those questions. The ending was amazing. Like not like amazing, amazing, but like that's probably a little over the top. The ending just made the book worth it to read, in my opinion, because I could have this book is, it's really small. It's really dirty. My copy that I got, I didn't realize that I was at a used bookstore and I didn't realize how filthy this was, which is a little bit disappointing because I did pay money for this book. And I get it, it's a used bookstore. This whole other side rant. But um this book is really disgustingly filthy. And for the amount of money that I paid for a used book that's also filthy, crime. I don't know. It was in with a whole slew of anyway, I'm getting sidetracked again. How does this keep happening? But that being said, this is the type of book that if I was like really engrossed in it, it was a really good book, I should have finished in one day. It took me an embarrassing long amount of time to finish it because I was basically like being like, okay, I'll read through this chapter, I guess, tonight. And then the way the book is set up is kind of jarring. So the three different perspectives, they do a chapter each. So you'll have like a chapter of Beth, a chapter of Jeffrey, a chapter of Marcus, or it'll go back and forth between Beth and Jeffrey for a bit. But the problem with that is Jeffrey and Marcus's chapters focus so much on like what was currently going on and piecing together the mystery, that when you got a Beth chapter, it was so jarring to just be thrown out of the mystery and then immediately like into the this woman's just life. It's just basically her, what you think, like again, perspective shift at the end. It was great. The ending really made the rest of the book worth it. But what you think is just this woman moving on with her life, and she's on the run, and then she's trying to start over in a new town. So it was just, I wouldn't say that like her chapters were like, it's kind of mean to be like, oh, her chapters, I dreaded reading them, but it kind of was. I was kind of like, oh, this mystery, and then, oh, I have to be pulled out of this mystery for a few seconds to read about this, and it did make sense at the end though, why it was like that. The ending definitely made it worth the read, because by the end you were like, "Oh, that's what was going on in the whole book. That makes so much more sense why they were doing the things that they were doing." And the ending was great. I love a good ending in a book. I think I'm gonna start a new rating system on these two, which I'm kind of excited about. I Since we're the Disarmed Chickens, I'm gonna rate this book 3 out of 5 chickens. I don't know. This makes me happy. So I'm excited for this new turn of events. And I know right now we don't have much comparison for what chickens are worth. But we'll gain that knowledge as we go and as we rate more books. Yeah, I'm excited for that. Okay, I have to consult my notes here because I still got off track. I you would think after doing this video a second time, I would be more prepared, and I have notes. But I think that concludes where we're going with the non-spoilers. Definitely pick up this book and read it. I would say the middle part is kind of a chore to get through, which sounds like this should be a 2 out of 5 chickens book, which it would have been if the ending wasn't so good. The ending explains all the middle, and it's kind of like a moment. So the ending really saves it from going from 3 to 2. So 3 out of 5 chickens. Read this book. From here on out, we're gonna be doing spoilers, and I'm gonna have to really get it together with thinking about what is going on. Okay, so as you start going into the mystery of everything that's going on, you find out. So Sabine has a sister. She has a twin sister who she talks to every single day, who knew more about her life and her schedule than her husband Jeffrey did. Jeffrey, when the detective comes, Jeffrey can't answer any of his questions. Ingrid, her sister, immediately can answer every single one. And this is one of the reasons why I did not think Sabine and Beth were the same person, because Beth also has a sister. And her sister, it's said in the book, her sister knew about the abuse, didn't want her to go back to her husband. What her sister didn't know was that her husband was threatening her. And that's why, threatening to kill her family. And that's why she would go back. The thing is Ingrid immediately tells the detective about an instance where Jeffrey hit Sabine one time. And one time is all it takes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not being like, oh, it was only one time. No, that is not the context I'm going for here. That's not what I want attached to my name, that's for sure. So my whole point with this is Ingrid and Jeffrey hate each other. Like, they despise each other. They bicker and argue throughout the whole book. It is well known they don't like each other. So if Beth and Sabine were the same person, Ingrid would have immediately told detective, just like how she immediately told detective about that one time that he hit her, about all the other times that he hit her. Because in the book, Beth's sister knows about it. Like I said, she knows. And so that was like one of my main points about why they didn't know each other. What? That was one of my main points why Beth and Sabine were not the same person. Another reason why I immediately clocked that Beth and Sabine weren't the same person was you find out in the book that Sabine has a lover, a doctor who she's been seeing for months, who she's planning that weekend before she disappears to leave her husband for. She's going to leave her husband for this doctor. And with how Beth describes her abuse and how jealous her husband was at like anybody even looking at her wrong, I don't and I just can't picture a woman this terrified of her husband having a lover for months. You know, she's scared beyond belief. She would be way too terrified to see another man on top of how her husband was. So that was another reason why I did not think that the two were the same person. And if she had a lover, her lover would have immediately recognized like the signs of her abusive husband. So you would think that the doctor lover would have also immediately told the cop if they were the same person that, hey, her husband's been abusing her and I know about it. You know, it didn't tie in, it didn't make sense. Um at one point in the book, you find out that the doctor also had a wife. She is not available for questioning for the cops. Like he's like, she's away, you're not going to be able to talk to her. So she's just not in the picture. The cop Marcus also has a wife who is not at the family event. She's at a retreat. She's sick. All the wives in this town are missing, and I think they need to call the National Guard. I just that's the thought I had, and I thought it was funny. But I immediately thought that as soon as I found out that every single person's wife was missing, which I understand why they did that. It's to play up the ooh, which one could she be, you know? But like I said, we already took out Jeffrey, you know. And at the same time, if you take out Jeffrey, I feel like you also have to take out the doctor, because if the doctor was horribly abusing his wife, I mean, I guess maybe Sabine and the doctor's wife didn't have much contact with each other, so it could have been the doctor's wife was Beth. I don't know. I just didn't see I saw the doctor as more of playing it up the whole time, cuz the whole time they're trying to get Marcus to already find out what's happened to Sabine, and the doctor cries a lot, and he's like he gets like the national news to cover the story, like he's really pushing it through. And so the entire time I was like, I feel like he's more hamming it up because he's the one who killed her, you know, kind of deal. That was my thought. You also find out that Sabine was a realtor. She was a realtor. Um, and she made that was another point, was like she made way more money than her husband. They just kept throwing this in this man's face, and he kept like he wasn't very happy about it anyway. But it turns out she had a secret account where she had a ton of money in it. And that was another reason why the doc or the cop was like, you killed your wife Sabine, Jeffrey. She had all this money and a lover, and you quarreled once and hit her. And you know, so it's kind of setting it up to where maybe Jeffrey killed Sabine? Question mark. Um it's about here in the book that it's about here in the book that Beth has kind of like settled down. She's working at a church, um, which isn't really like super relevant to the story. Beth's kind of relevant because she's the whole main point of it, but everything she does isn't like super relevant until the end. She does steal money from the church towards the end, but she, you know, I'll talk about that later. She has a friend at the church too, you know, she's this other girl that she's getting along with. It's interesting, you know, reading about, but it's not like it takes you away. You know, like right now I was like super into the thick of like the mystery of what's going on. Now all of a sudden I'm talking about a church. That's kind of the feel of Beth's chapters right there. Um but it's kind of here that it also starts like piling on Marcus a bit, because the whole time you in his chapters, you see what he's doing. Oh, he's making progress. He's found like her burner phones. He's like tracking her down. Like, you know, why are I can see why Jeffrey and the doctor are calling him incompetent and being like, oh, he's not doing his job correctly, because they don't know, because they kind of are out of the loop and not need to know. But then his chief also at one point like pulls him in and is like, "Hey, I need to know what you're doing on this case. Like this is unacceptable." And it's kind of weird at that point. I clocked it as weird immediately because I was like, if he um if he's doing all this work, why is everyone just being like, "Oh, you're not doing anything?" So I was like, that's a little suspicious. Um which I was right to be suspicious. Uh, Let me consult my notes before I tell you the ending. Okay, I went over everything I wanted to go over, which this is a first for me. So we're going to talk about this last bit, the ending. You find out at the end Beth is Marcus's wife. I was correct about that. Um I wasn't correct about anything about Sabine, though. So Beth's wife was Marcus. He wasn't actually looking for Sabine that whole time. The reason why there was this disconnect between people not telling him that he wasn't doing anything and all of the stuff that you're reading about him doing is because he was looking for Beth, not Sabine. That's why the book kind of tricks you because you're like, wait a minute, these are the exact same like routes that Beth took to get away from him, but it's making it seem like it's Sabine. No, that's because he wasn't looking for Sabine that whole time. Because Marcus knew where Sabine was the whole time because Marcus killed Sabine. Yeah. So remember how I said Sabine was a realtor? Well, she showed Marcus and Beth's real name was Emma, but they call her Beth the entire book. So I'm just going to continue calling her Beth. They show Marcus and Beth a house at one point, and that was shortly after Jeffrey had hit Sabine, so she still had a little bit of a bruise. And Beth, for what she doesn't even know what possessed her, but for whatever reason, she confided in Sabine at that time when Marcus was like up looking at the attic, like being like, I understand, like my husband hits me too. And then they didn't see each other for months. And then they happened to run into each other at a Rite Aid. And that's where they started actually talking. And Beth was like telling Sabine, she was like, you have to leave your husband. If he hits you once, he's going to hit you again. You know, it doesn't matter all these nice things that he's doing for you right now. You know, he's not turning a new leaf. So I think that was really one of the main driving forces for Sabine to leave Jeffrey as well, or to want to leave Jeffrey. Because at that point, she started trying to help Beth. And she tried to help, which is really kind of sweet if you think about it. Like Beth was a complete stranger to her. Like they had only met at this point twice, and she immediately tries to help this girl. They didn't have any contact over texting, emails, nothing. What they would do is when they met up, they would say the place that they were meeting up next, and then they wouldn't write it down anywhere. And they wouldn't go to the same two places, more than once, kind of deal. And Sabine started volunteering at a women's shelter. So she started picking up all these tips for Beth while Beth is trying to like squirrel money away little by little. Um, Sabine is telling her all these tips that other women did that didn't work or that did work. So they're coming up with a plan. Now, the only reason why Marcus knew about Sabine, which a lot of these encounters, like there's a lot of chance encounters in these books. They happened to find Beth after she'd been hit at the house. She happened to meet uh she happened to meet up with Sabine as their realtor after Jeffrey hit her at the house. They just so happened to meet at Rite Aid, and then Marcus just so happened to see them at one of their meetings at a park. And he's obsessive over his wife, Beth. He timed the exact amount of time their conversation took place, and he didn't say anything to them. He didn't walk up, he didn't say anything, he didn't do anything at this point. He just kept that knowledge to himself that she met up with this woman in a park and they talked for 16 minutes. So later, when his wife went missing, he immediately went to that woman and questioned her, like, hey, what was that about? Do you know her? And Sabine lied and said, it was a 2-second conversation in a park. I don't know what you're talking about, trying to protect Beth. So sadly, Sabine met her end with Marcus, and Marcus was extremely sloppy with her death. So, like, as soon as he was off the case, they immediately knew who did it, which makes me think that Marcus's original plan was to pin it all on Jeffrey. Because, he was the lead detective on the case. So, of course, he wouldn't point the evidence to himself. But I just thought that Sabine's life in this was super sad because, she was finally starting to be happy with her new like lover. She was planning on leaving her husband that weekend. She was filthy rich. Good for her. Um, but then she's murdered by the husband of a woman she didn't even really know and just wanted to help. So I thought that, Sabine's ending was really sad. Um, so more on Marcus. You get to meet Marcus's family in it, and Marcus talks about his dad sometimes throughout like the book. Like his dad was an ex-convict, he was dead, he wasn't the best of men. His mom was all about family, and they go to these family gatherings all the time. And when you find out that Beth is actually Marcus's wife, it kind of like takes you back to this moment where they were at a family gathering and Beth thought that Marcus was going to hit her when he was like throwing a napkin or something, and she like freaks out. So that the entire family knows that Marcus is beating Beth. And Beth even says it in it like she points out the reason why she thinks his family did nothing for her, which is really really sad because Beth had her sister, it sounds like, and she didn't want Marcus to hurt her sister, and so she, I guess, had somewhat of faith that they would help her because he didn't think that he would hurt his family. But the reason why she realized that they weren't going to help her at all was because his family wanted her to change him. They thought that, oh, a good wife can change a man because he turned out to be exactly like the dad. And I just thought that that was really kind of sucky and sad. So, the very end of the book, there's a double twist to this book, which I thought was brilliant. So, not only do you get the twist of, oh yeah, it's actually like the cop's wife this whole time and Sabine's been dead. But you also get the twist that Beth wasn't really running, like she was, but she knew he was going to find her. So, she lays a trap. Um she basically sent him on a wild goose chase this whole book so that she could like regain her control back, and she takes him to this really bad motel. Basically she's staying at this motel where gunshots common occurrence. Nobody messes with anybody's business. There's constantly fighting. Anytime anyone like anything happens, people just shut the doors. They don't help anyone. And that's what she's counting on because she lures Marcus up to the roof of this building. And then she has a gun. She was very smart with her gun. She bought 2 guns, one of which she kept unloaded and in, like, the waistband of her coat, and then the other one had 1 bullet in it in her purse, which I thought was kind of an interesting move, but, whatever. Like, what are you gonna do if you miss? That's what I was originally thinking. I was like, "Well, that's dumb." Anyway, because she was banking on Marcus finding the first gun, which he did. He immediately did. He threw it out. He didn't even think to search her bag because Marcus doesn't think that Beth is very smart, is the thing. But Beth was very smart this whole time. Marcus just also thinks he's way smarter too than everybody else. It's clear throughout the books, and he's very unhinged. Um, and he tells her, they can't go back to where they were. He's planning on murdering her that night. So she lures him up to the rooftop. She runs from him. She manages to get away. She gets up to the roof. She pulls out the gun. She backs him up to the edge of the roof and is basically like, no, you're going to say sorry to me. He can't say sorry to her, whatever. They have a back and forth exchange where she shoots next to his head. Like she doesn't hit him. She aims to shoot next to his head. And the shock of it makes him step backwards, which he goes off the roof. When all of this is being investigated at the very end, she's talking to the chief of police. She opens up to them about what was going on. Chief of police gives her Marcus's pension. It's a happy ending for Beth. Beth is able to reconnect with the people from the church who she really liked, and like the friends she made, and pay back the church the money that she stole. Uh, it's not so much a happy ending for Sabine because she, obviously she looked up what was happening with it. And it turns out that at the very end, Jeffrey, Ingrid, and the doctor are all just fighting over Sabine's fortune. That's the ending for Sabine, is everyone she cares about is fighting over the money that she left behind, which, you know, how typical, right? Anyway, a lot better about this one. Maybe I should make them double videos. I don't know. Let me know if this went better than the average one or not. Anyway, 3 out of 5 chickens. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.